The UK government has issued a licence that permits the sale of Chelsea to the Todd Boehly-led consortium. And to bring us right up to speed with this, we are joined by our senior reporter, Geraint Hughes. Geraint, tell us why this is so significant.
It's significant because this has never happened before. This is the first time that the UK government, the British government, has had to intervene in the sale of a football club in this way. It's unprecedented, it's complex, it's complicated, protractive, and probably causing a lot of frustration and annoyance for a number of Chelsea fans, because what does a fan want to do? They just want to watch their team play football. And there was some doubt about whether they were going to be able to do that if you go back to March. It was a bit worrying at times there. However, the course of the last few days, and I think in particular sort of yesterday and overnight, to get the required assurances and deals in place by the UK government, they have now been able to issue a licence which allows Chelsea to sell the club. And we know there has been an agreement between Chelsea and the Todd Boehly-led consortium. So that agreement, that sale, can now go ahead. We moved to completion on that. Now, the Culture Secretary, Nadine Dorries, she has released a statement with regard to what has happened now overnight. What she said is that last night, well, I understand the early hours this morning, the government issued a licence that permits the sale of Chelsea. Given the sanctions we placed on those linked to Putin and the bloody invasion of Ukraine, the long-term future of the club can only be served under a new owner. She goes on to say that they are satisfied, i.e. the British government, the proceeds of the sale, that's the sale of Chelsea Football Club, will not benefit Roman Abramovich or other sanctioned individuals. She goes on to say that she wants to thank everyone, especially the officials who worked tirelessly to keep the club playing and enable the sale, protected the fans and the wider football community. So that is Nadine Dorries, who is effectively, I suppose, been the boss on this. She's the Culture Secretary, Secretary of State. So her department, the DCMS, have been working tirelessly, along with Chelsea Football Club as well. A lot of people at Chelsea Club who most people will never heard of or never know. They've been working really, really hard to work within the limitations of the sanctions that allowed them to trade for the part of the season from March onwards, but now to get to this point where a sale can be completed.
It all comes after yesterday. The Premier League said that the consortium had passed its own owners and directors test. There's never going to be a stumbling block there, was there? No,
but the problem, I said at the beginning, and I took a dramatic pause between everything about unprecedented, complex, frustrating, all those things. There are so many parts to this situation. Chelsea finding a potential buyer, in this case Todd Boehly. Then the UK government, which slapped sanctions on Roman Abramovich. They then also made Chelsea, only allowed Chelsea to exist, to trade under a special licence. Because of Roman Abramovich holds a Portuguese passport, there need to be assurances that the Portuguese government were happy with, and the same likewise with the European Union. So the European Commission had to receive assurances and oversight on this potential deal. All centring around the fact is that in no way would a sanctioned individual, i.e. Roman Abramovich or associates, benefit in any way from the sale of the football club, that he could not access any of the money. So the Premier League owners and directors test, that is just another part of that. That's sat separately from the government. The government haven't done an owners and directors test of their own. They've worked with the Premier League. They know the parameters. They said, right, you do that, we'll do the other stuff. So the Premier League, they signed off on that, yesterday evening. Just another process that had to be completed. But I think we got to the stage yesterday where the word I was getting from my contacts within government is that this process was moving, and yes, there was light at the end of the tunnel. So the Premier League was just a formality, but it still had to be done and it still had to be signed off.
OK, so the process is moving, as you say, but that doesn't mean that the takeover is complete, though, does it? Because the financial transaction of the sale still needs to go through. And Geraint, how long could that take?
Have some patience. It won't take too long, but it's not going to be done and dusted in the next hour. Right. We're in a process now, because a licence has been issued to Chelsea, which allows them to sell the club. It's what's called move to completion. The really, really good news for Chelsea, and please, anyone that's sort of feeling sort of a bit about this, is that they have a buyer. there's been an agreement. That's a really difficult, challenging bit. There's already agreement in place between the Todd Boehly-led consortium and Chelsea, but you move to completion now. It's a financial transaction. It's going to be a two-part transaction of the 1.75 billion pounds that the Boehly Group will invest into Chelsea, then another around 2.5 billion pounds that goes into a separate account, which will be monitored by a third party. Part of it, essentially a frozen account under the control of the government, and that is the part that may make sure these assurances that Roman Abramovich and as a sanctioned individual cannot access that money. So that's what happens now.
Yeah.
It's a transaction. You can't get a bank to do anything quickly, can you, really? So that's the situation they're in now.
Not when it's that size.
And just maybe key to point out, just very, very quickly, in terms of Chelsea, does this mean they can sell season tickets or buy players? Well, no. As I sit here right now telling you, for Chelsea supporters, you're pretty much in exactly the same position you were last week. At the moment, you still cannot buy new players or issue, say, new contracts to players or season tickets.
There's a few waiting, isn't there?
Because the actual sale has to be completed. When that happens, Chelsea will have another licence which will allow them to do all that. But we're close.